February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. I hope you all are filled with love and all keeping it up. I got my
Did you
red
just say
lights
and all
on for
keeping it up?
I said all Cupided up.
Oh, all
Oh, I
Cupided
thought you
up.
said while
gotcha.
keeping it up.
I
You
was
guys
like, all
have
right.
dirty
I was like,
minds.
I
You
guess I
have
hope that
dirty,
too. I
dirty
I
mean,
hope you
minds.
had a
Your
good
minds are in
Valentine's Day.
the
Ding.
gut.
we also hope that.
I don't know, you guys. I think you've been reading the wrong
I don't know.
magazines,
Freud
using
said
the wrong
those
using the wrong
Freudian
dating
slips.
apps.
That's like a
Huh?
Freudian slip, though. I think that actually goes to your subconscious, buddy.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever you say,
Yeah.
Danny. Well, happy day after Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope you're cupiding it up, not
There you go.
keeping it up.
Well,
Because
I hope both. I hope
if it's
both.
been up this long, you should probably go see a doctor at this point.
They say after 4
I'm
hours.
pretty sure that's part of the commercial.
All right.
Anyway, uh, welcome. How are you
What's the
guys? How's
topic today?
today's topic? I didn't want to get
It's
into that yet.
Little
Oh,
blue,
okay.
different.
Yeah.
How are you guys? What's going
What's
on?
up,
How's
Christian?
your
What's up,
week?
Randall? Good. Good week.
Good
Busy
week.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, busy.
Nice. Very cool.
Busy.
Welcome everybody who's watching. If you are watching, we have a very special announcement about the Web Dev Incubator, but you got to stick around to the end for that one.
Ooh.
But what I do want to do is introduce today's topic, which is a pretty cool one. Today's topic, we're going to talk about how to basically brand yourself and market yourself as a developer. Because believe it or not, that's probably like 90% of getting your first job as a developer
Well,
is branding yourself, right? Is your reputation.
yeah, this
Go
is
ahead, Danny.
it's a good topic too, because like if you ever listen to anything like by recruiters, like there was a great podcast I used to listen to, those tech recruiters, they would always have on talking about it. And like you can't just all of them would say, like you can't just rely on your resume anymore. You can't just rely on your merits.
Yeah.
Like there's all because of the world we live in, right? And because if you're into
Yeah.
technology and that's what you do, you kind of have to be into it, and like understand it fully and
Yeah.
how it's being used. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that we see quite a bit just because of where we are, where we see a lot of people who are what I like to call aspiring web developers, meaning like people who just want to switch a career from what they are in now to web development. And I feel like a lot of the people who get into it, maybe not a lot of them, but there's definitely a portion of them who get into it for the wrong reasons, right? They just want the money, they want the time freedom, they want all the perks, but they don't realize that it comes with, a love for technology and a lifelong dedication to this. And so if you're not willing to swallow those two pills,
Yeah.
you're probably going down the wrong road. Go ahead,
I actually
Danny.
wanted to just say too, because Randall Point made a good point. It's kind of, yeah, I need these skills. It's one thing I never had to do as an educator. And I think a lot of people
Yeah.
changing careers later in life to tech, one of the struggles is you already had a career. And if you already
Yeah.
had a career, you were established, you didn't need to do all this crap because you already had one. I think that's the other
Yeah.
side of this that people have to realize is like you're changing careers, you're starting over. And you're starting over in a different world than when you first started working. So you
Yeah.
might need, to focus on things differently, like social media and stuff, which we'll talk about. So yeah, I think it's a good point.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something to be said for sort of like your mentality going into this. I mean, the idea here is not to be an expert, right? The idea here is to show off like your skill sets, what you can do, and just show yourself off like you're going through this journey and you're learning, right? The best thing that
Yeah.
you can do to show people is to just communicate that, right? The best thing you can do to show people that you're a developer and that this is what you do is like literally just communicate that. It seems like some magic sauce, but if you look at celebrities and you look at all these people outspoken in the public, politicians and things like that, really all they do is speak loudest. That's really all that it is. At the end of the day, it's who can hold the mic the longest and speak loudest. And that's sort of what you need to do as a developer, believe it or not, is just be that person that every time someone signs into LinkedIn, they're seeing something from you or about you or with you involved in it.
Or at least
And
there's some trail and history of you participating in things, doing things, and like because it shows you
exactly.
care outside of like your job part of it, right? It shows you're
Yeah.
interested. And I think that's the other
Yeah.
thing. Like this is somebody who will want to keep learning. This is somebody who's engaged, like, as opposed to somebody who's just like, I got these skills, that's it.
Yeah. Good
So
morning,
you
Bryce.
mentioned you
Good
mentioned
morning,
the
Randall
loudest
Point.
voices out there, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes along with how to build a portfolio that will get you hired. Because nowadays there's so
Hmm.
many things competing for our attention that we're very good at tuning most stuff out. So if
Yeah.
your portfolio and how you present yourself is exactly like everybody else, you're going to be tuned out as just noise. You want to
Yeah.
be the one that stands apart. So you have to think about that stuff when you're designing your portfolio, when you're contacting these people that you want to work with or work for. You need to do stuff that other people aren't willing to do or aren't doing in order to be noticed.
Yeah.
And a big part of
Uh,
that too is just not being afraid to do that, right? To reach out,
yeah.
to make
I,
the first contact. Like,
I like to think of it also. I know this is sometimes a little bit difficult, but I like to think about my sort of job search from the reverse perspective, from the hiring manager, right? What are they experiencing? Because I've been on that role as well. And it's way more boring and difficult than you probably imagine, right? Like a lot of times when you get resumes, they all look like basically the same crap. Like every single resume you're going to get for a web developer is going to say, yeah, I know React, right? But that doesn't really tell you much about that person. Doesn't tell you anything about their behavior. How much React do they know? Do they just know how React works, or can they build beautiful UI with React,
yeah.
right?
Even their experiences are
So
going to sound very similar too, you know? I mean,
yeah,
like even their job history is going to be like, here, I did this, I did that. Like, yeah.
yeah. So I like to sort of put myself in the perspective of a hiring manager and like, what would I do? Right. Well, probably the first thing I would do is look at my look like close network. Do I know anybody who already knows somebody who's a web developer who's good? That's what we mostly do when we hire people. Like we don't we don't try to hire from across the other side of the world all the
Nepotism.
time. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but it
it's
makes sense,
nepotism, but it
right?
makes sense too, right? Because you've already built a relationship. And so one of the
Especially for small
suggestions,
businesses too, I think that's 100 like, absolutely true, right? You
yeah,
already know the person, like it's you're gonna work well with them.
totally. So I want to go through like a few suggestions that I have in terms because I want to give people some actual meat. I know we've been saying like you got to like market yourself and brand yourself, but what the fuck does that actually mean, right?
No,
So
exactly.
yeah, so what does that actually mean? So I think the first thing that you need to do is like the foundational bases, right? Like cover the normal bases. Do you have a clean looking resume that has real portfolio projects on it, any relevant work experience? Is it formatted well? Is it, you know, has it gone through an ATS checker? Have you shown it to somebody else who's like, yeah, this looks great, right? I think that's like huge. Number one is you got to have that.
I
Yeah.
want to
Then
comment
you,
on that real fast.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
it just recently in the Web Dev Incubator, we reviewed someone's resume, and
Hmm.
taking a look at the resume before it was reviewed
Oh
and the
God,
resume
yeah.
after it was reviewed, it went from something that no one would
Significantly
even
better.
look at to pretty much an exceptional resume. And it's quite
Yeah,
shocking because like
In about
you wouldn't
24
even
hours too. Didn't take much time, you know?
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's something that could definitely make the difference in someone getting a job. So like being able
a
to
hundred
having
percent.
a community where you can do that type of thing is definitely helpful.
Yeah, and get that feedback. Absolutely. So I think that's that's huge. You got to have a resume. The second is if you want to be a developer, you have to have a not portfolio. You have to have a GitHub, right? I think
Yeah.
actually GitHub's more important than a portfolio or like portfolio website, right? I think
Yeah.
that's actually more important for a developer, and that's because that is where you basically put all your code, right?
Also, I
Or
would add too to that that enter README on your GitHub for your profile that's well structured and that
yes,
provides good information about what you've done, how to contact you, projects you're proud of, things like that, so that people can access them.
yeah, Randall Lapointe over here
Yeah.
shamelessly plugging my app too.
Hey,
If
good.
you,
It's a good app
yeah,
for for
when you
cover letters.
actually go to apply for a job and you want to write a cover letter, so I hated writing cover letters, so I built an app to do it for me using AI called Cover Better. So you can certainly use that if you want to, but yeah, I mean, personalize everything, right? This is the point too, is that at a certain level, you shouldn't even really have to do some of these things. Like you shouldn't have to do a cover letter if the person already knows you well and you already built a relationship. Some of the best hiring comes from just knowing people outside of a resume, right? So I think those are important is, you know, have a resume, have a GitHub. your GitHub, like you said, have the README, have it looking clean, have some really nice projects on there as well. Even if they're
Bryce
not
makes a good
huge
point.
projects, just nice, clean stuff. Yeah.
I was gonna say Bryce makes a good point too, which is yeah, and in your do the README for your projects, especially ones that like other people are gonna see that you're gonna like that are public or that are like you're gonna show to like prospective employers. Do a README file for it that explains it. It just shows
Yeah.
that extra step. It makes it look better, more like a real project rather than like some tutorial you did or something.
Yep. And you guys would be surprised. It would only take maybe an hour or two to go through every project you have in GitHub, explain it to AI, and have AI write you a README file. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like not complicated. So yeah, so you have your resume, your GitHub, then a portfolio website, I think is appropriate too. And that shows off two things. One is just, your skill set, right? Is showing like, hey, you can actually build websites like you're saying you can. And then you can also show off all of your projects on there. Going further, I think you can also make a case study for maybe one or two of your high quality projects, right? Which is like, a case study is just like a written report. Like Randall is probably very attuned with writing these sort of things with cybersecurity, but you're basically writing a report on what you did. So, what was the problem that you were trying to solve? What was your design strategy? What was your tech stack? You just like write out everything you did. And this looks really good to employers as well, because not only can you build something, but you can explain it and communicate it very
What
well.
also shows too, and I think when you write that out, if you cover all the steps, it also shows that you know how to do a project from start to finish, to plan one out, and you can also
Yeah.
discuss challenges that you encountered throughout the project and how you solve them. Because it shows prospective employers too that you know how to rationally think through these things, you know how to problem solve, you understand the technologies that exist out there, you know how to leverage stuff to benefit you. I mean, this is all important. It's just showing people like you're competent, right?
Yeah. And then I think the last piece of sort of foundational stuff that you have to do is a LinkedIn profile. I know that sucks, but they're also very necessary when it comes to finding a
More
job.
social media.
Yeah, more social media. And we discussed this in the last web dev incubator, but one of the cool things about LinkedIn, I don't really recommend uh I would say having much faith in applying for jobs on LinkedIn, because there just tends to be a lot of sort of ghost jobs, or there's just an influx of way too many applicants for most jobs on
And
LinkedIn.
so
And
much
they,
spam on there too, dude.
yeah.
Oh my God.
So I wouldn't recommend necessarily like, putting much weight behind any job you apply for on there. However, you can find some great recruiters on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the main benefit. And recruiters basically are they're working sort of for you. They're not really for you. It's more for like the company. Um, but they can help you find work. And so what I was going to say is, inside the incubator, when we were doing this resume review the other day, we also were talking about LinkedIn and how you can keyword stuff your LinkedIn profile in order to get more recruiters reaching out to you. So if you're looking for a web dev job, you just go to ChatGPT and say, what are the most important keywords related to web development or modern web development or whatever job it is, and then you incorporate those into your profile as much as you possibly can. Um,
So I had a question that some people may be asking.
yeah.
When is a good time to do this? Because at least the way that I'm thinking about it, you need to at least be able to kind of build websites before you should start applying for jobs, right? Especially
No.
since junior developers are, you don't think so?
No. Well,
I
I
mean,
think
you
that's
can
a
apply
common
for jobs,
thought.
but who's gonna hire you if you don't know how
Well, nobody's going to
to
hire
build a
you
website?
without experience, right? So
Yeah.
this is the catch 22 of software development right now, is that nobody wants to hire somebody who has no experience. So you need to get experience without being hired. So how do you do that? You freelance, right?
I
Or
thought you were gonna say you lie on your resume.
oh,
That
well,
too. No.
that's an option. It's an
Yeah,
option.
you build
Less,
personal projects, passion projects, and you freelance, right? To build stuff out that you can
yeah.
show what you're capable of doing. But I think to your point though, if you're really serious about this, starting on getting your LinkedIn set up, doing all this stuff early is better than waiting late till later. Because you get it out of the way and then you can just update it. And it also gives you a history too of like you know, contributing, but whether you're like, maybe you're sharing your journey as an aspiring developer in a blog or something, even something
Yeah.
like that would work, just to show that you care, you're learning stuff, what you've been doing, all that.
I think Bryce made a good point here, and I want to talk about this for a
Yeah.
second. So Bryce said, recruiters are a double-edged sword. With little experience, it may be a hard pill to swallow for an employer to fork over 30K to a recruiter plus the cost to bring you in. I agree with Bryce. However, I want to make this really important point here is there's going to be like when you're doing this right now, there we're trying to sort of sort out like the perfect order for doing these things. There is no perfect order. You should do as much of this as you can as early as possible. And that's the point that we're trying to make is that you should start trying to find work immediately. Like why wait to get paid, right? You're the amount of knowledge that you have right now, most people around you don't know that. They just want somebody with a little bit more knowledge than them who's willing to do the task. So, my point of this is just that it's going to be very normal to sort of put up these mental roadblocks, right? Like not worth you know, I'm not saying that Bryce said this, but like don't go down the path of it's not worth fixing up my LinkedIn profile because recruiters aren't going to pay to hire me because it costs too much. Don't go down that path. Just do it. Just do the thing, right? Like let the world sort that out. But that's a mental roadblock of like I'm not going to spend time on LinkedIn because I don't want that to affect, you know, recruiters or something like that. Like I just want people to realize that all of this stuff, the more that you do it, the better. So do as
Actually,
much
I
as you
wanted to,
can from the beginning. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Go
to
ahead,
that
Danny.
point, like when we started our boot camp, I got on LinkedIn, I started applying right away,
Yeah.
early. And I knew I wasn't like at the time skilled enough to really get the positions I was applying for, but I
Yeah.
did it because I hadn't done interviews either in a long time. I
Exactly.
just
And there's
haven't. I've been in, you know, I was in a career for almost for 15 years. I didn't need to interview, right?
yeah.
So like
It's
it was
also like
helpful.
you get a
I knew,
lot of experience with that. Like
yeah.
how many times have you been in a tech interview? Well,
Well,
that's going
that's
to be a
just
new
it, right?
experience for everybody, right? So
So
do you expect
I
that you're
did
going to
four
do
like
that
that
perfectly
year.
the first time? No, right? Instead, apply now. Hopefully you get an interview and hopefully you bomb that interview so that you can
No. Oh
see
yeah.
how to
Dude,
improve, right?
no, but it was good though because that's what I was gonna say. Like I bombed the first one, and then the other three I did
Yeah.
okay on, but I just wasn't, you know, I knew I wasn't getting hired because I wasn't skilled at the point. But it was a really
Yeah.
good experience because I was like, okay, because they were all structured
Exactly.
the same, they were all kind of similar, and I was like, all right, so this is kind of what it's gonna be like. You know, you have a good idea, you're not as scared. Then when you're actually interested in a job and at that level, you know what to expect. It's not gonna throw you,
Yeah.
throw you a curveball.
Just keep in mind to try. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I
exactly.
think Bryce's point is important, right? Is like he's saying, you know, not to not use recruiters, but he's saying like focus your energy where it pays off the most, which I completely agree with, right? Is networking and recruiters are part of that, but they're not like I've had mixed reviews with recruiters. I think some are
Yeah.
good and some are absolutely horrible. But it's also, you know, they don't work for employees, they work for employers. So I think you just have to keep that in mind too.
So,
So
oh,
go ahead.
wait. So I do think it's important that like as you're learning web development, because a lot of people who are watching are learning web development now. So as you're
Mhm.
doing this, watch some of our previous podcasts about how you can start making money now as a web developer
Yeah.
because you can use low code solutions to build websites for people. And that's essentially building out your portfolio and building out your projects. So
Yeah.
then as you're gaining the experience learning web development, you already have the projects and the websites built, and then you can just add the stuff on there. Because I had like an interesting experience this week where I was chatting with some people, and one person is an iOS developer,
Hmm.
and he was asking about what we do, and I was like, well, we just kind of get people to start building websites for other people because you can make a lot of money for it, and there's always job security because everybody
Yeah.
needs a website. And he's like, really? And like literally, as we were saying that, the dude sitting
He's
right
like,
next
I
to us
need a
was like,
website.
yeah, I'm like dying to get this website made. Do you know some? And I'm like, point in case.
You
You're like,
see?
everybody
Yeah.
needs a website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because,
And
because
so
nowadays there's so much people doing entrepreneurial pursuits too, that outside of like maybe their regular
yeah.
job. And there's also just anything you need to do, you need to get that information out there. And the best way is going to be online, right? So, I mean, there's just no getting around it. So there's always
Yeah.
going to be work. Yeah.
I think you bring up like such a great point too, is that when we just sit here and we talk or we're among ourselves or whatever, like obviously we're gonna be like, yeah, no one out there needs a website, right? Like you just like your mind's like, yeah, nobody, I don't need a website, so nobody else could possibly need a website, right? But the point of what you just said was you literally just all you had to do was communicate, right? All you had
Yeah.
to do is like put it out there in the world that you build websites, and all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, I could use that service, right? And so yeah, I think that's huge. Is like one of the best things you can do, and this is sort of where I was going next, is we talked about like foundational stuff. You just have to have this stuff in place, right? You have to have a resume, you have to have GitHub, you have to have LinkedIn, there's maybe a portfolio. There's just no getting around that. You could throw in there maybe an agency website if you want to like be a web agency. uh but then there's like the next level, I think, above that of, okay, now these are things that you can start doing to set yourself aside, like aside from the rest of the crowd, or just garner more attention. So I want to open it up to you guys if you have any ideas. I have a couple that I want to go over. There's one of them,
Yep.
right? So you wear a t-shirt that says, yes, I'm a web developer. People are gonna be like, oh, that person's probably a web developer. um
I
you
think
know,
Randall makes a good
I
point
think
too. In the
that's a huge
comments,
one.
he picked up business cards from the gym that he went to, just all
Yeah.
the business cards. He said 80% of them don't even have, like, they either need a website or don't have one. So there's another good way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One way
Squarespace
that I do it,
advertised during Super Bowl. Everyone needs a website. And guess what?
Yeah.
Most people still with Squarespace can't figure out how to do it, or don't have the time or energy or
Yeah.
care to do it. So
Also,
they'll be
just like,
more than happy to pay you.
if you're nervous at first too, just talk about what you're doing when you're with your friends, when you see your
Hmm.
family. Because when you say that too, they'll remember that you're doing that now. And that, you never know, that can lead to somebody too, somebody they know reaching out to you, or them reaching, connecting you guys, so that maybe you get something that way. It's always just getting this information to the world is the first step, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Anything else you wanted to
and
share
yeah,
of?
one thing that I do is like anytime I'm searching for stuff, if you're looking for it on Google Maps or something and it doesn't have a website button on there, that's like an instant they need a website.
Yeah.
Or if you click on it and their website still uses HTTP instead of HTTPS, like the secure version of HTTP. So like that's another red flag that they need help. Or if their website you go to it and it's just looks bad, that's another red flag. So like there's a whole bunch of these things that come up that are just indicators you see all the time in your daily day-to-day thing. And those are excellent opportunities because you're their local web developer expert. They can't
Yep.
find
Yeah.
anyone better than you because you live right near where they are, you use their services, you're literally there anytime they have a problem. It's the choice between you and someone in India that they can barely communicate with, who charges them for not great work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they going to go with?
We got a
Yeah.
good question too, I think, from it was from Christian. He said, he's been creating websites on WordPress and stuff. Oh, stupid pop-ups. Um, since 2014, he said much competition with Wix, GoDaddy, their website builders. He says, so like he's trying to learn more skills, but he says, how do you promote the difference? And I think here too, it's like I think both low code and custom are good for different use cases. And I
Yeah.
think it also just you doing it for somebody, the difference is it's higher quality. Even if you're using low code, they don't have to do the work. You understand it, it's going to come out better. You know what you can do with it. So adding on, additional things like using API, stuff like that, that's possible. So it's just a matter
Yeah.
of like, I think recognizing that you have the knowledge to make it better than they could do by, leaps and bounds.
Yeah. For me, I don't know if this is answering the question correctly, but for me, the difference between WordPress or Squarespace or custom coding something for somebody really comes down to price, right? It comes down to how much are they willing to invest up front and how much are they willing to invest sort of on the back end. Options like Squarespace, WordPress. I'm going to speak specifically about Squarespace because it kind of just encompasses all of them. But an option like Squarespace, right? The upfront cost is lower. It means less customization for the customer. Like you have to work within the confines of what Squarespace allows you to do. So if they're trying to build a modern web app, it's just not going to work, right? Like you just don't have that. But if they just need a simple website for their business that can be templated and doesn't need a lot of content and just shows a little bit of static stuff, Squarespace is a perfect solution because one, they're probably not going to want to pay a lot. So you can charge them less to just do the build. And then they pay a monthly fee, which they're usually more inclined to do. Whereas if somebody comes to me and they're like, I want to build an AI app that's a custom app. And that's when you're like, this is 10 to 50 to $100,000 project. It's just a different like customer, but the average local business, mom and pop store or whatever, they need a Squarespace website, and those are the easiest to make. You can charge like very easily $2,000 to $5,000 to build one of those, and do it in like a week, right? So there's huge money to be made in that. So anyway, to get back to it,
And let's just do the math for people who can't do math in their head very quickly.
yeah,
So let's say you build that website, charge $2,000, and it takes you a week. Well, if you take 2 weeks off a year, that leaves you with 50 weeks, and 50 weeks times $2,000 is $100,000. So just
yeah.
using Squarespace, you could have a six-figure income.
At the most
You can
scaled
also
down
get
business model ever,
yeah,
one person
yeah.
doing one sale per week, like you
Yeah.
can make
You
100
can
grand.
also do, and you can also, if you build in maintenance and stuff with that, that changes
Right.
that as well.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like that's like the bare minimum. You could pretty
Mhm.
easily make that. So, okay. So I want to give some more ideas of ways to sort of promote yourself as a developer. Um, that's outside of, the typical things, like outside of your resume, your LinkedIn. We got all that stuff. So I have a few ideas. I think these are some of the most important ones, I would say, for nowadays, right? Because go ahead, Danny, you
Oh,
have something to say?
I was gonna add some too, but
Yeah,
if you want to go
go
first,
ahead.
okay. I was gonna say, like, I think if you're learning and you're getting like, you're starting to develop your skills, going to conferences, doing stuff, conventions, stuff like that, where you can network,
Yeah,
but also learn about what's new and coming up in the field. You
yeah.
can talk about it. It makes you sound more knowledgeable, makes you sound more ahead of the game. Um, I'll let you add the next one. I was gonna add that for now.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, I think the number one thing here, the number one theme that we're gonna have here is networking, right? And
Yeah.
networking meaning literally just talking to people in the industry, talking to what other people are doing, what they're working on. And so there's different ways to do that. One of them is obviously going to conferences. There's an expense there, but I promise you that going to conferences is usually one of the best expenses you can have. It usually pays off in leaps and bounds just with the connections you make. So definitely recommend that. And there's some cheap conferences. Also, if there's any local meetups, right? Like I know meetups is kind of died out, but there are still groups that meet in person. And I want to stress this too, is like meeting online is incredible. Like we have an amazing community inside the incubator. I wish we could all meet in person,
Oh
because
yeah.
there is a different dynamic to it when you meet in person. But uh, take what you can get. If you can only get virtual meeting in the incubator, that's awesome. If you can add to that meeting in person, I know Chris inside of the incubator, he meets with a local group of coders, I think once every 2 weeks. And it's not a lot, but it's enough that you start to get to know people, right? And just take part in developer communities. Like you have like Reddit, you have tons of Discord communities, you have our Facebook group, right? How many times have you posted in our Facebook group? You may not realize it, but the people in this group are future web developers who may have a job that they might be able to connect you with, believe it or not. Like that's how networking works, right? There's a bunch of
You
people in
never
here who
know
are
where
interested
it's gonna come
in,
from, right?
yeah. And I can tell you that too, just from our incubator, right? You don't realize the connections you have until you have them. I mean, we see this over and over, and it may be surprising for people who are sort of just listening, but
It's like
every time
everyone that
there's
comes into it.
yeah, every time there's a new person in the incubator, they're like, yeah, I don't know how to get started. I don't know how to find people who want to hire me or like who I can do work for. And basically our first thing is like, well, have you asked like your friends and family? And the next week when they come back, they're like, hey, I asked my friends and family and I have 4 people who want a website built for them. So you'd be surprised, but that's a huge one. The other
Well, I
thing I
think
would, go
it's
ahead.
just getting started too. I was gonna say that's the other thing for most people. I think we put
Yeah,
our own limitations on ourselves.
yeah,
We come up with a million
totally.
excuses of why not to do stuff when we just need to do it. So if you just start
Yeah.
doing it, you'll find one, it gets easier and easier, and two, the opportunities just get larger and larger because you're creating them. You're making the potential for opportunities by going out and doing this and saying you're a developer and talking to people.
Yeah. All right, so I have two more. These are sort of related, and these are I think other big ones that are sort of overlooked. And this is one that you hear a lot, but it seems sort of like hard to get to. So this one is contribute to open source.
That was
Okay,
the other one I
so
was gonna say, and I forgot.
yeah.
Thank you.
So like you hear this a lot of people like, hey, just go out there and contribute to open source. And like this is something that I've struggled with too, where you're like, cool, that sounds great. I'm happy to contribute to open source. How the hell do I do that? Right? Do I just start like searching through GitHub profiles for things that have issues? And really the answer is yes. The answer is sort of like you find projects that you're interested in, and then if you go into the project repo, there's a spot on the top that says issues, and you can open that, and then you can sort, and there's tags basically, right? And they're for all different issues. And there's two that you can usually look for, either help wanted or good first issue, meaning like a good first issue for somebody who's new to the project, and work on them, try to fix it, and then make a pull request, right? And hopefully your code gets pulled into a project. And if not, you still got to work on some code. But this is a great way to be a contributor to open source projects that are like have big names too. And you can
Yep.
add that to your profile. And you start to work with these teams, right? You start to be part of the community instead of on the outskirts. You're not looking
Yes.
in anymore. You're like part of it.
You
Right.
see how other developers work, you communicate with
Yeah.
them, you learn how to do it with others, which is important because that's what you're doing in business. The other thing I wanted to add too
Yeah.
is that, and this is probably like yours is a good way to start if you're just starting out with like open source, but there's if you use certain packages a lot too, a lot of times on their documentation it'll say like if you're interested in contributing,
Yes.
reach out to so and so. Like I know
Yep.
Daisy UI says that, I think Tailwind might even say that. Like
Yep.
just if you see that and you're comfortable, you use that a lot, you're comfortable with it, that might be a good one to reach out and just be honest about where you're at. Say, look, I really want to contribute. I'm learning. I think I'm about this level. If there's anything you think I can help with, that would be great. You don't have to
Yeah.
be you don't have to worry about like getting in over your head or anything. I don't think anybody's gonna mind.
Yeah, no. Some other suggestions I have are, this is a little bit, higher level too, but participate in a hackathon, right? And that doesn't mean like hacking computers. That means like codeathon, basically.
Mhm.
Because again, you're usually working. Most hackathons are hosted by a tech company, which usually has job openings available. And this is like literally, I mean, if you think about it, if you're a tech company and you want to hire the best talent, why wouldn't you just go to a hackathon and look for the best developers and then offer them jobs? That's what they do. It's
And see
literally
how
how they
you get to
find.
see how they
Yeah.
work too.
Yeah. So if you want to do that, go and participate. And like, who cares if you don't win, right? It's experience. It's adding more things, because then you can again put that on your resume, participant in so and so hackathon, right?
Oh, actually,
Um,
also to that point,
yeah.
don't expect to win your first time either,
No,
because
of course not, right?
it's gonna get easier every time you go. I
Yeah.
always think that like your first tech interview, your first time out hack, whatever, just treat it as like this is my chance to see what it's like. And then
Yeah.
I can do better next time. That way you don't set yourself up for, being let down, but also you're gonna approach it in a more comfortable way. You don't think you have to prove anything.
Yeah. Totally. So we're getting to the end here. I have like a few other ones, and they're sort of I'm gonna just group them all together. And that is just put yourself out there, be social. Like there's so
Yep.
many ways to share your story and contribute, right? So you can start a YouTube channel and make YouTube tutorials. You can start a podcast. You can go on LinkedIn, and there's like, I forget what they call it, but it's basically
They're
like
expert article things where
expert
you like
articles. Yeah, like contribute to that. Anything where you can get your voice out there in a developer community, do it. Like participate, make a blog, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. I know like in our group, I think Chris is recording his journey in an X account, in a Twitter account, right? There's just so many different ways that you can get out there and show people that you exist and that you like are a developer. And that's really ultimately what it comes down to. We overcomplicate it. All you have to do is really get people to know you're a developer. This is what you
because
do.
what's funny? If you just sit at home and learn to code, no one has any clue you're a developer.
Exactly. And nobody cares.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you got to do stuff and you got to build stuff, right? And put it out
Nice.
there in the world. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. I hope you got a lot out of today's episode. And with that, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I want to announce our relaunch of the Web Dev Incubator. We have just switched over to a new, more beautiful, more feature-packed platform so that we can provide more value for you guys and keep coming at you with lots of good content. So for this week only, we are offering special discounted pricing, and you can actually just head over to www.codenoobs.io. You can see our new website. You can see the different offerings that we have. As of right now, we only have the Web Dev Incubator open. We will be opening the other portions throughout the week. But for now, the incubator has reopened. We're relaunching it. Normally, it's $4.97 per month, but if you sign up this week only, we're offering it for $2.97 per month for the monthly plan. So if you are on the fence, if you've been considering it, this is absolutely the best time to do that. Danny just dropped the link in the description. You can head over there to codenoobs.io and see all the information. If you have any questions, you can also just schedule a free action call with one of us directly from the website there. And we'll jump on a call with you and explain everything that's inside the incubator, how it works, if you're a good fit. Otherwise, if you're feeling up to it, if you want to just like commit to it, become a web developer, and really commit to the future that you want as a web developer, you can actually join on your own this week. So head over to codenoobs.io and you can sign up and you'll get instant access to the course, the private Telegram group, the weekly Zoom calls, the replay vault of every
Our awesome
single
community.
mentoring, that
Hundreds
we've
and
done.
hundreds of hours. in the
Literally.
replay
Hundreds
vault.
of hours of mentoring
Maybe
calls.
even
You
that. I
have
don't know, it's a
instant
lot of
access
stuff.
to. You can watch all of that. You get access to everything inside the Web Dev Kickstarter. You can build the Chrome extensions. We have code alongs. It's just really packed full of good stuff, and we're always adding to it. So if that's something that interests you, if you're curious, if you've been on the fence, this is probably the best chance of the year that you will have to get into this at this pricing. So with that, I won't take up too much more of your time. If you guys are inside the incubator, we'll see you in about 20 minutes. We have our motivation and accountability call today. And of course, if you have any code reviews, we can look over that stuff as well. But yeah, with that, do you guys have anything else you'd like
No.
to share or no? Okay. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully that helped you understand what you need to do to, get your name out there and become a developer that employers are looking to hire.
Nice.
So yeah, with that, we'll see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and keep on coding.
Later.